Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Wind Rose, Troll Slayer, out October 4th on Napalm Records. The album has 9 tracks, 42 minutes in length, and this is the band's 6th full-length studio album. They are an Italian power metal band. When it comes to the design of this record, this is a very balanced album. Balanced musically, balanced in terms of the quality. Now, when you have an album like this, you're obviously going to have some repetition. It's just a natural output of the way the album is designed and what's within it that creates that sense of repetition. Now, what the band did was that they alternated songs that had different styles of nuances in them, either both musically or vocally. So when you add these songs in a more dynamic format, you allow yourself to minimize the things that makes these tracks more equal to one another and emphasize the things that makes them different. This makes for a better experience all around. It reduces that repetition, it makes the album more vibrant, and it makes the experience overall a lot better. Once you get into the sound, this is definitely a folkier sounding record. Not to say that the band has never used these elements before, but on a consistent basis, this is a party anthem record from start to bottom. So for that party sound, for that anthem sound to work a lot better, to have a little bit more emphasis, to hit a little bit closer to home, having a more folky inspiration behind it and having more of a folky drive in your melodies definitely brings that message home. It defines the songs a lot better. It places them a lot better. So sonically, everything starts to fall into place in a more constructive way. You have the themes of the songs playing into the lyrics of the songs, and then the sound represents that lyrical theme extremely well, extremely vivid. Most of those folky melodies are really coming from the keyboards. The keyboards are extremely important on this record, and they are definitely one of the common denominators throughout the entire album, specifically when it comes to that folkier side of the record. But understanding that element, it's going to be there consistently, and understanding the impact that it's going to have, it's important within the mix for you to still pay attention to the heavier side of the band, the drums and guitars. Give them enough room to breathe, give them enough room to expose themselves, giving them enough room to have their chance of pushing these tracks forward, and that is also going to create a more balanced approach, and it's going to minimize the impact of those synths overall, allowing the tracks to still feel heavy, to still feel like they're taking the listener forward at a very nice tempo with a lot of intensity, with a lot of energy. And that's exactly how this album comes together. When you listen to this record, I think you're also going to find, outside of the folky influence, that it's very consistent from start to finish. I also think you're going to find this to be perhaps their heaviest album to date. It has a huge emphasis on the drum sound. It has a huge emphasis on the guitars as far as that more robust experience is concerned, as far as that heaviness is concerned. And a lot of the size of these songs are really created by those drums and by those guitars, not necessarily creating an orchestral backdrop through the keys in order to give the songs size. The songs are given size by the heavier side of their sound, and then the folkiness and the more melodic, the more bounciness in terms of the sonic experience, that comes from the keys. So it's an interesting way of constructing an album that has size, as all of their previous records had, but I felt that in the past it depended a lot more on the keys, on orchestrations to create the size, sometimes subjugating the guitars and drums to a secondary role. It's not the case here. It's a more balanced approach where all of these elements have an equal part to play in the sound that you're going to get sung in and sung out. And then you get to the vocals. Once you get to the vocals, you're obviously going to get that Wind Rose approach of having a vocalist with these choirs and backing vocals and layers behind it. It's a huge part of their sound, of their essence, of who they are as a band. So vocally, that aspect of the record is there. That aspect of the band is represented on this album throughout the entire record. There was no surprises there. There are no changes there. I think the album stays very close to home. If there's one thing that I haven't really seen change over the last couple of records, is the overall vocal approach and how those vocals are integrated in the overall sound experience of the album. Where the surprises creep in are in certain key songs. You look, for example, at the second track of the album, Dance of the Axis, where you have harsh vocals. That to me was a surprise. I was not expecting that on this record. I was not expecting that on this song, but it works really well. And it throws an immediate caveat right at the beginning of the album. And then you have a song like No More Sorrow at the end, where you have a little bit more of a singing voice. It's not as much of an anthem as it is a larger than life track, perhaps their biggest song ever. And I don't mean in size, but I mean in texture, in richness, in what it offers. Over 7 minutes of a great dynamic track that closes off the record with an absolute exclamation mark, both musically and vocally. So this album, from a vocal standpoint, it added new nuances that I hadn't seen developed fully up until this point, while still keeping some of the more traditional elements of the band alive and well. When you put all of this together, this is easily the band's best record to date, at least as far as I'm concerned. It's an album that has 9 great individual songs. It's an album made of singles, but in a way that still connects the songs, that still creates fluidity, that still feels like you're going to get more out of this record by listening to the entire album than just picking a few songs along the way. A lot of their previous records had great songs, had great individual tracks. Some of them had a great overall design, but I haven't found yet, up until now, a Wind Rose album where all of these pieces come together. Great individual songs and then a great overall perspective. This album definitely achieves that, being a more mature record, being an album that's better crafted and obviously better executed, bringing all the right pieces, all the things that they've done right in the 5 previous records, now bringing them together into one single album, making Trollslayer, like I said, in my opinion, the band's best album to date. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I have to mention Dance of the Axis, an anthem, great tempo, offering a heavy folky vibe, which the whole album has, but this is the first song where that folkiness really comes to the forefront, really becomes evident. That's going to be perhaps a main staple of what the entire album is going to be, and that folkiness adds bounciness to the song. It makes the song overall more memorable, more hooky, both in the verses and in the chorus. Having the harsh vocals on this song is something that I did not have on my bingo card when I came in and to listen to this record. So that also allows the track to stand out. It also has really heavy drums. I felt like the drums on this track were very heavy, heavier perhaps than what I was expecting, considering how bouncy and how folky the overall song is. But that heaviness of the drums creates a nice counterbalance to the overall light-hearted aspect of that more folky melody. The mix of vocals, the mix of the vocal styles works really well. The chorus is super hooky, super catchy, and this is one of the best songs on the album, which is a very hard thing to say because there is no bad songs on this record. Next we have The Great Feast Underground. Now this is your drinking party anthem. This is what Korpiklani song would sound if they were a power metal band. It has all of the Korpiklani elements in it when it comes to drinking, when it comes to bounciness, when it comes to folkiness, when it comes to having a great time. So I love this Wind Rose take on that style of sound, on that style of approach, but keeping their DNA alive and well throughout the entire song in terms of how the track moves, in terms of the power metal aspect that the song offers. The vocals add volume and power to the way the song comes across, really helping define the overall vibe of this drinking party anthem, if you will. The main melody of this song is so hooky. It's an absolute hook. It's line and sinker. You're taking it all. And then obviously the heavy drums, heavy guitars, infusing that power metal experience into a very folky drinking song, really making this a perfect track all around. Last but not least, no, I'm not going to talk about No More Sorrow, which is one of the greatest songs on this record. I think it's one of the greatest songs that Wind Rose has ever wrote, but I want to mention actually Legacy of the Forge, because it's a track that has a different kind of energy. The vocals really give size to this song, which is not something that I see all the time with Wind Rose. Normally the vocals are a reflection of what the sound behind them is doing, and on this track I felt it was perhaps a little bit of the other way around. It still has that folkiness, but on this track it comes in with a more medieval style folkiness, a different style of folkiness. This album is very folky from start to finish. I think that I've said that word over 100 times on this review, but it's not always the same style of folkiness, and on this track It's not the type of drinking tavern folkiness, but rather more medieval approach to it. And that makes also the sound of the track feel and coming across a little bit heavier. It's a very balanced and controlled song within the verses and the chorus, but the chorus is slightly more explosive and definitely catches the listener's attention. This is it, Windrose with Trollslayer, out October 4th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. See you all at the next video. Take care, guys.